Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Interim Title Show. We have a lot to talk about this week. A lot of news happening in the combat sports world. A lot of exciting things in the works. I'm excited to get things going this week. We're going to open up talking about Tom Aspinall and John Jones. It seems like today, as I'm recording this, earlier today, Tuesday, April 22nd, John Jones and Tom Aspinall was going to be a done deal. That is not the case. Chael Sonnen, UFC Hall of Famer, legend, fantastic analyst, and, MMA mind, was saying this fight's a done deal down to the date. Everything's agreed upon. That is no longer the case. Ariel Helwani said that it is not true. Chael Sonnen has kind of backtracked here. He has now thrown out a new rumor that it's going to be Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane for the interim championship. This will be Aspinall defending his championship, even though Chael has this weird thing that, there can't be an undisputed champion and an interim championship at the same time. Tom Aspinall is the interim champion on the UFC official website. Tom Aspinall is the interim UFC heavyweight champion. Is this fight going to happen or not? That's where I've been at for a long time with this now. This fight should have happened in November. It's a shame that this fight has not happened. And I'm really disappointed that it hasn't happened yet. And it's the blame is solely on John Jones here. And John Jones does have the right to walk away from the sport and retire, but I wish he would just do it already if that's what he wants. Because there's no other option for him. It's either fight Tom or retire, right? And he talks about how he wants to retire, how he's put his body through a lot. And that's something that I think us fans can't understand, that aspect of it, because John Jones has looked so good in his last couple fights. He's only fought, like twice in the last 5 years, maybe 3 times. He looked really good all those times. But just the wear and tear of that training camp is something that us fans can't really understand. And I think just if John wants to retire, he should retire. He's one of the greatest of all time. He has nothing to prove. He has nothing to prove. So just retire if that's what you want to do, because he's holding up the division. And it's frustrating from a fan perspective. And I really thought this was going to be the International Fight Week, main event, and it's definitely not going to happen for International Fight Week. Maybe it happens later down the year at MSG, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen, and that's a shame. And I don't know if it happens at all. This fight has a big if around it, and the more time goes on, the less confident I feel it will happen. So, what is the International Fight Week main event? It seemed like the pivot was going to be Dricus du Plessis and Khamzat Chimaev. That is no longer the case, as DDP is saying that he is injured. Caio Borralho of the Fighting Nerds said that he would like to fight Khamzat for the interim title. The middleweight interim title, I mean, like, Dricus just fought in February, right? You can wait till the end of the year before you're forcing an interim title in that division. Especially if you have an idea of maybe that DDP can fight at the end of the year. If he can't fight at the end of the year, then yeah, you make that interim title fight. But like what a mess International Fight Week has been. And you have Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev, and whether that fight's going to happen. That fight kind of needs to happen now. The UFC had a lot of great options here. They had Ilia and Islam as a great option, Khamzat and DDP is a great option. Tom Aspinall and John Jones. Those were 3 fights we'd all really love to see. 2 of them definitely aren't happening for International Fight Week. So when we look at that International Fight Week card, right, I do think Caio Borralho and Khamzat Chimaev will happen. I think that will happen at UFC 317. But I'd like to just kind of like paint a picture of how I envision this card playing out. And I think we will get two fighting nerds. I think Caio Bahaio and Mauricio Rufy will get, main events, main card slots, I mean, at UFC 317 International Fight Week. Rufy will get his ranking to perhaps open the card. He's the last of the major four fighting nerds to not have a ranking in their respective division. That's going to change with his next fight. He's going to fight a ranked opponent, and you'd imagine he walks through that ranked opponent as well with how excellent he has looked in his early UFC career. Caio Bahaio and Khamzat Chimaev. I mean, it really does seem like DDP's injury is legitimate. Khamzat was talking about how he was not happy with that. Him and Bahaio was going back and forth. That seems to be the fight, even though it looked like we were going to get Bahaio and Amivov like last week. But things change really quickly, and I think Caio Bahaio and the Fighting Nerds have that star power, and they have a lot of buzz around them. And Khamzat Chimaev is for a long time has been kind of talked about how he was going to be this next elite UFC champion, and he's the best contender out there, and I think that's the fight for them to make for UFC 317. Some people have predicting the cards have put that as the main event. That's not going to be a main event for International Fight Week. It can't be a main event for International Fight Week. Whether the interim title is on the line or not in that middleweight division, that can't be the main event. The co-main event, I think, without a doubt, is going to be Pantoja, who was supposed to fight at UFC 314, but the UFC had to make Michael Chandler and Paddy Pimblett instead as the co-main. It's going to be Pantoja and Kai Kara-France. And that would be the main event over Caio Bahaio and Khamzat Chimaev in the interim status, because that's for an undisputed title. And typically flyweights don't headline pay-per-views, and they don't headline International Fight Week. Pantoja's co-main evented International Fight Week, and he deserves that spot for sure. It's just the UFC has made a mess of that flyweight division, and the UFC fans don't appreciate that flyweight division as much as they should. It's the most competitive division by far. It's one of the toughest divisions, and it doesn't have that star power. And a lot of it was that Demetrius Johnson, Dana White feud, kind of discrediting DJ as the rightful pound for pound number one over Conor McGregor, and just some pay-per-views not selling well with DJ as the headliner and those sort of issues. And it's really hurt the division, and it's Pantoja's really helped this division grow, in my opinion. And it's a really competitive division, and that is an excellent co-main event. And think about Rufy, Bahaio, and Khamzat and Pantoja and Kai Kara-France. That's a great International Fight Week card, but it doesn't have that main event pop to sell pay-per-views. And my prediction for International Fight Week, with Makhachev moving up to 170 being in doubt in the post, it all depends on Bilal Muhammad at UFC 315 on May 10th. What happens in the lightweight division, which is kind of strange and frustrating. And the lightweight, there's a lot of uncertainty right now. So my prediction has been Volkanovski versus Evloev, and then having that really stacked card with Pantoja, Kai Kara-France, Bahaio, Khamzat, Mauricio Rufy around that, Volkanovski Evloev fight. That's interesting because Volkanovski's the name and a good A-side for International Fight Week, but Evloev is considered boring by many and not an exciting fighter by the fans, and doesn't move the needle in terms of pay-per-views himself. Kind of puts it all on Volkanovski. Volkanovski is a guy who would fight anyone, anytime, anywhere, and fight short notice. obviously to a detriment at times. And that has always been my prediction. But now Ilia Topuria says that he has began his, his first full training camp for his lightweight title fight or lightweight debut. And that makes me think that Islam Makhachev and Ilia Topuria may happen Bilal Muhammad win or lose. Or maybe it's Ilia Topuria and Charles Oliveira because Ariel Helwani was talking on his show today. The difference in star power between Islam Makhachev and Charles Oliveira, it's neck and neck. Right? I think Charles is almost as big of a star as Islam Makhachev, the greatest lightweight champion of all time. Charles Oliveira is right there with him. Charles Oliveira is a superstar in the UFC, one of the most beloved fighters in the history of the sport. And Charles and Ilia, maybe for a vacant lightweight title if Islam does move up, or for an interim title, that is interesting, and that can sell pay-per-views. Again, it's an interim title, not an undisputed title, but those two guys could sell pay-per-views, title or no title, because Ilia Topuria has this. Even he would be the B side in a fight with Charles Oliveira, but his ceiling, Ilia Topuria can be that next Conor McGregor. It could be Paddy Pimblett. It really could be Ilia Topuria. I think Ilia Topuria will be the face of the UFC by the end of the year. And I stated that on that channel when I first, started this channel, and I stated it in, my writing on Primetime Productions and at Fan Arch. Ilia Topuria will be the face of this company very soon. And I think he's going to come in here and fight on International Fight Week. All the big stars do it. Volkanovski, Adesanya, Conor McGregor. Ilia is the guy for International Fight Week. And if they can't make it work, you could always call Volkanovski. But those are the UFC's options right now. And it's really strange because I felt like they had so many good options for International Fight Week, and just for some reason things haven't been turning out the way the UFC wants to, with Tom Aspinall and John Jones, and with this DDP injury here, and with stuff in limbo with Islam Makhachev. But they need to have Topuria on this card. I agree with Ariel Helwani his take on that. That needs to happen realistically, and if not, you do have Volkanovski, and that is one of the biggest benefits for the UFC to have Volkanovski back as champion, is that he is willing to do anything for them. He is the company guy through and through. Now we're going to switch over to boxing briefly. We're going to head back to MMA later. But Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois seemingly will fight for the heavyweight championships, undisputed again for Usyk potentially, in July. But it may not be for undisputed after all, because Joseph Parker is a WBO mandatory. Parker and Dubois were supposed to fight earlier this year. Dubois pulled out. Joseph Parker knocked out the replacement fighter, who was twice his size, in like 2 rounds. Joseph Parker has been on a really good run following his loss to Joe Joyce a couple years ago. He's won a half dozen fights or so. And Joseph Parker is a former champion. And Joseph Parker deserves to fight either Dubois or Usyk right now. That is without a doubt. He has earned that opportunity. He has earned the opportunity to make that kind of money. And he's deserved the opportunity to fight for a title. And the politics are against him a little bit in this scenario. And Usyk stated that he only has 2 fights left. So I think it's pretty clear that his next 2 fights, Daniel Dubois, maybe Daniel Dubois twice if he loses Daniel Dubois and loses that undefeated record and loses those belts. But if he beats Daniel Dubois, it's Joseph Parker. So it's Dubois twice or Dubois Parker, and Usyk rides off into the sunset as one of the greatest of all time. He should fight Joseph Parker, without a doubt. I know people were upset about that Daniel Dubois fight, the low blow, whether it was a low blow or not, and Usyk was knocked down and all these sort of things, and all that controversy. You can go and watch it on YouTube. That was not a competitive fight in the slightest. There is revisionist history on that. Usyk walked through Dubois. Dubois gave up. Usyk knocked out Daniel Dubois with a jab in like the 9th round. It was not a competitive fight. Usyk won every other moment of that fight except for that low blow situation, whether it was a low blow or not, whatever. If it wasn't, he still won every other second of that fight. It was not a competitive fight. Yeah, Dubois looks different. He knocked out Anthony Joshua. That was a huge moment for him in his career. You know, he has a title now, the IBF championship. He is a really dangerous heavyweight, really dangerous contender, really for undisputed. You know, he's a champion now. He's great. He has a bright future ahead of him. I don't want to see that fight again. That wasn't a competitive fight, and it's revisionist history to state that it was. And you know, maybe Usyk looked a little flat that night at times if you really watched that fight. You know, that was an outdoor fight. The ring was wet. It was raining. Usyk's biggest asset is his footwork, and he didn't really use his footwork and was more flat-footed in that fight against a bigger fighter, and he still knocked him out. We don't need to see that fight again. Joseph Parker deserves to have that fight. You know, it's one of the things with boxing. It's very political. It's why a lot of fans have shifted towards the UFC. And yeah, boxing has more stars than the UFC, if we're being honest with ourselves. Right? It's without a doubt. And Eddie Hearn was taking jabs, being like, how's things going over in the UFC? They don't have any stars right now. They do. They're not champions right now, necessarily. I mean, Ilia Topuria is a star, right? Volkanovski's a star, right? Alex Pereira was a massive star, still is, no longer champion. Charles Oliveira is a big star. John Jones, Tom Aspinall. I mean, like, these guys are still big name fighters. Sean O'Malley's going to be a big star, even if he loses to Marab again. Like, they're still big names, and they're still exciting fights, and they're still exciting fighters. I'd buy another Diego Lopez pay-per-view in a heartbeat. But it's really the politicalness of boxing that's made it frustrating, because boxing's a better product. It's a more exciting sport. It's just, it gets in its own way. And it's one of those situations where it's doing it again. It's very frustrating. Parker deserves Usyk. Dubois does not deserve a rematch with Usyk yet. Parker has done more to earn that fight than Dubois has, despite Dubois having the belt. That's my opinion. We're going to shift back over to the UFC here because we are going to preview Carlos Pratas versus Ian Machado Gary. I do not know how this fight is going to play out. Carlos Pratas, member of the Fighting Nerds, got a big knockout streak. Probably the most impressive rookie of 2024 in the UFC. I mean, he was fantastic. You know, this is an opportunity for him to kind of make his way into the top 10. You know, he's supposed to fight Jeff Neal in UFC 314. That fell through. Now he's a better opportunity in front of him. For Ian Machado Gary, he's taking a massive risk following a loss at UFC 310 to Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now, Ian Machado Gary is an excellent technical fighter. Carlos Pratas is a knockout machine. How is this fight going to play out? And I think one thing is we know that Carlos Pratis on the feet is fantastic. We know Ian Machado Gary is an excellent striker as well. We do know Ian Machado Gary has evolved his grappling very much. He got him a win against Michael Venom Page at UFC 303 International Fight Week last year. It almost got him a submission against a excellent grappler in a number one contenders fight in December. So you'd think similar to what we believed heading into Shavkat Machado Gary fight. This is the classic striker versus grappler. If it's on the feet, you favor Machado Gary. If it's in grappling, you favor Shavkat Rakhmonov. But that's how we felt about Gene Silva and Bryce Mitchell. Gene Silva submitted Bryce Mitchell. Carlos Pratis is in the same gym as Silva. Carlos Pratis may have better grappling than we think. And it may surprise us, and it might give Ian Machado Gary trouble. And for Ian Machado Gary, I'm a huge fan of him. At 27 years old, I think he has, great experience, and I think he's going to continue to have great experience. I mean, he's 4 or 5 years younger than most of the guys in the division who are these up and coming contenders. So with a loss, that's a very valuable experience for him, and he still at a young age can really develop in his prime and take that experience to be an excellent contender and future champion. I think win or lose, I'm going to feel the same way about Ian Machado Gary being the future welterweight champion. But I think this is a very tough fight for him. And it's awesome he took this fight on short notice again. And he's fighting a fighter that not a lot of people would want to fight right now. This is a tough fight for him because his style of really being technical, always staying back, keeping you at length, he has short arms for that style, but he's a big welterweight. But Carlos Pratis is also a big welterweight, and that reach advantage isn't really there. And he kind of just can't keep you away like this, like he did with Jeff Neal. I think he needs to come forward a lot more and be a little bit more explosive, a little bit more offensive than he was against Shavkat Rakhmonov. And if he does that, he's going to be open himself up to being clipped more by Carlos Pratis, who's on a crazy knockout streak. I mean, this is just, it really depends on how much Ian Machado Gary has improved since December. And I really don't know. I really don't know. But when it comes to prediction, as much as I love Carlos Pratis and the Fighting Nerds, I believe Ian Machado Gary can pull this one out. Because I believe he is special. I believe that he is a future welterweight champion. I think just how much experience that he has in the UFC at such a young age, how much he's evolved in the last couple of years with his jiu-jitsu and his grappling, and how he got a win against Michael Venom Page via grappling, which is really surprising, and how he ended up almost nearly submitting Shavkat Rakhmonov, the boogeyman of the welterweight division for the last several years. It was quite shocking. So I believe, in terms of prediction, that Ian Machado Gary will win UFC Fight Night in Kansas City on Saturday via split decision. I think it's going to be a close fight. I don't feel overly confident in it. This is like a 51-49% situation. I think this is going to be one of the most competitive fights we've seen in a long time. It's one of the most intriguing fight nights we've seen in a very long time. This is a much watch on ESPN on Saturday. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you guys think of UFC 317 International Fight Week, how that card's going to play out? Do you think Tom Jones and Tom Aspinall happens? Do you think Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev happens? Both of those fights have big ifs surrounding them. Let me know what you think of Alexander Usyk and Daniel Dubois in that situation. Should Joseph Parker get that fight? Should Daniel Dubois get that fight? Let's talk boxing this week, huh? It's been quite some time since we've talked boxing on the Interim title show. So please drop the comments below. And let me know what you guys think. Be Machado Gary, Carlos Pratis. predict the winner for me. Please like and subscribe to the Interim Title Show. You can follow us on Instagram at Interim Title Show. And thank you as always for watching.